Okay, well, welcome to Charter Directors meeting for the month of February. We're glad to have you here. And we will start off with a director's message from Dr. Paul Kramer. So please take it away, Dr.
Oh, thank you, Marie. And good morning, everyone, or good afternoon. It is Monday. It's the start of the week. And Marie and I continue to meet operators, administrators, directors in our schools. And one thing that occurred to us is that many of you have been doing this for 5 years, 10 years, 15, even someone today for 20 years. We've been authorizing schools at the Utah State Charter School Board for 20 years. And there are some schools in our state that have charter schools for close to 25 years, maybe a few right in that time. So we've been doing this very important work, charter school work in Utah for quite some time. And those of you that have been doing it, just a heartfelt thank you, a lot of gratitude for your hard work. You make an impact in students' lives and families' lives in providing choices. And it's just remarkable. Every time we meet someone and they say, yes, we've been doing this work for 20 years. And so just again, really want to say thank you for that work, and it's recognized. I'll tell you though, although we've been at it for 20, 25 years, whatever timeline you put on it, that the future is very bright. I said in a staff meeting the other day, and staff looked up to see where it came from, but it was alt-rock group that said the future is so bright we have to wear shades. And I really believe that. Marie and I talk about just the opportunities for more students and more families of high quality choice in education. And that's because some of you that have been doing this for 10 years are going to do it for 20 years. And if you've been doing it for 15, maybe you can do it for 30 years. But all along the way, we as your authorizer, if we are your authorizer, we want to continue to support you in this very impactful and very great work that you do. We do believe the future is bright. One opportunity that we do have coming up is just some additional funds that'll become available for existing charter schools, not just new schools. So in the past, we've had startup and implementation funds. Maybe you've heard Marie talk about it in a past meeting, or maybe at a professional development opportunity. Maybe you tuned in to part of our board meeting just last week, Thursday, where we talk about having the opportunity for some smaller sized grants for startup and implementation of things like new curriculum or new programs, or maybe innovative practices. And so we need one more board meeting in March to finalize this plan, but we're getting very close to roll out an opportunity for some smaller size grants. But we know every dollar matters, and every resource that becomes available can make a difference. And so that's one thing that we see coming up in the very near future. You know, with the startup and implementation and that type of work, we really want to just talk also in this meeting, and Marie and I discussed an opportunity to share out with this group that we want to support you in any of your endeavors, whether they're small school expansions, large school expansions. Maybe it's even a potential strategic merger or something of that nature. And it's our opportunity just to say, although we highly desire and want to make sure that we can support those initiatives and those endeavors, we just want to use it as an opportunity, as we did at the last board meeting, just to say that we also do adhere to policy and processes, to deadlines, and even to board rule. And so know that we will always listen. We always want to encourage you along the path strategically that you're taking, but then also just recognize that we're going to be transparent and share with you, hey, we got this deadline that we got to work with, or we have this particular process that we need to follow in order to have some, great authorizing type of work. Well, that was all for my part today. I'm going to tune in to this. I know we have a high quality meeting lined up. a lot of different topics and some training as well. So I'm going to stay in this meeting as long as possible, but stay encouraged in the great work that you do, and know that our future, even though we've been at it for 20, 25 years, that our future is so bright that we got to wear shades. So have a great week, everybody. And we really appreciate you.
Perfect. Thank you, Dr. Kramer. If there are any questions, we can also open up for that while Dr. Kramer is here and on the line with us. I haven't seen any come into chat, but we can hold that for just a minute. Maybe you dazzled them all and they're just getting their sunglasses, Dr. Kramer.
It was a fun weekend with the Super Bowl and other things. So, and we have a beautiful day in Utah today, that's for sure. So just stay encouraged. I think that's the main message, is that we all need to encourage one another, because while difficult work, that this is really impactful work that we all have been doing for many years. And I know someone encouraged me today, so I'm just sharing it out as well. So.
It does look like one question might be there about the Charter Revolving Fund. Steve, I don't know if you want to type your question or just come off mute and ask that question, either way.
I think I can just come off mute and just ask quickly, and this may be not the exact best place to ask this question, but my understanding is that fund has been made available for expansions and capital expenditures. And I'm wondering, I don't know how unique we are in terms of transportation among, across schools in the state, charter schools, but we depend on running at least a couple of routes for transportation to keep our school vibrant. And I just wonder if there's any possibility that the group would consider, expanding what that charter revolving fund could be used for, and if transportation could be anticipated as a future sort of addition to that fund, use of that fund.
One way to answer it, it's a good question. So one way to respond, is just we're going to stay tuned to the legislative session right now. That particular revolving loan has some potential changes that'll come out in the next couple of weeks. I think we're about getting close to halfway through the lawmakers session right now. I think 3 of the 7 weeks or something like that. And so I don't know where that particular bill is at, but I know that it could impact the flexibility that you're talking about, the amount, and other things like that. So I think if we kind of hang on to that question and wait until we see the results of this legislative session over the next couple of weeks, we can come back to it and respond with new law and with the new things that are in place.
Thank you.
Awesome. Great question. All right. Well, I don't see any others coming in. So we will keep moving ahead. We have our friends from USBE's Beverly Taylor Sorensen Arts program here. And so we are going to turn the time over to them. We'll let them introduce themselves, and they've got some great things to share about the Beverly Taylor Sorensen Arts program.
Thank you, Marie. Here, let's see if I can share my screen. Can you see that?
Yes, that looks great.
Fantastic. I'm Lori Bayevsky. I'm the Fine Arts Coordinator for the Utah State Board of Education. And I'm with my colleague, Lisa Clough, who is our private partner. She's Executive Director of Artworks for Kids, as well as the Beverly Taylor Sorensen Foundation. And today, I just want to give a shout out to Director Kramer and Marie for allowing us 10 minutes of your precious time to share what I hope a lot of you are already aware of. So talking about resources, talking about opportunities, the Beverly Taylor Sorensen Arts Learning Program is something that the Utah State Board of Education has been involved with since the inception, which is 15 years ago. This is our 15th anniversary of this program. And maybe we could just, I don't know, have a show of hands or put in the chat or something if you've heard of it. As you can see from this first slide, almost half of charter schools have what we call BTS Arts in their schools. And this is an interdisciplinary arts learning program where we use the arts in all of its manifestations in music, in theater, in dance, in visual arts to reinforce other core subjects with the classroom teacher in an integrated way. So yeah, I can't really see the chat, so I can't. How many people, Marie, are saying, yeah, we've got BTS in our charter schools?
Nobody yet. We do have
We have one
hand
person.
risen. Okay, now we've got one that said we do.
Okay, well, you know what I'm going to do.
Couple now. Yep, they're coming in now.
So I'm going to kick this off. This is something we shared with the legislature. I think it was last week at the PEA meeting. And this actually talks about the program. These are primarily principals, but also some classroom teachers and some BTS arts teachers talking about the programs. And this, I think, will be illuminating. So turn your volume up here. Let's see.
Lori, we don't have sound.
Oh.
When you were sharing your screen, there should be a button where you can select to share your sound.
Okay, let's see. Sound. Okay, share screen. All right. Same microphone array. Let's try. Let's see. Which one do I pick? Let's see.
So it should be like at the bottom where it says like to share the video and then share the audio as well.
Okay, so can you see my screen? Can you talk me through this, Marie?
I only see the video that you have on there.
Okay, so I have audio, microphone, same system as the speaker. Use a separate device. Let's see. Automatically join. It looks like I should have the audio going. Oh, let me try. All right, let's see if this works.
It makes such a big difference.
We had it for a second.
Is that working?
No.
Let's see. See. Is that not working, Marie?
No, it's not.
All right, let's see. Switch to. Okay, we'll try this one more time. And then if not, Lisa and I are just going to have a little chat with you about how awesome the Beverly Taylor Sorensen Arts Learning Program is. And we will put a link in the chat for you to enjoy the video when you have a minute. So let's just see. You go to advanced setting. Huh. Okay. You know what? I'm gonna skip to the next. Let's see. Let's go. Okay. I don't think I've had a technical failure. Lisa, would you just put the link in the chat as I talk about the Beverly Taylor Sorensen arts learning program. Or actually, if there's somebody in the room who can talk, that would also be good. So let me actually just go through a few things about the program. So as we said, it's reaching about 3/4 of our schools right now. And we're reaching about 260,000 students. What we do is we pair an arts educator with a classroom teacher or with a school in a particular discipline, in one of those 4 disciplines, to really reinforce the core subjects that are in your schools. And here's the resource slide. So 80% of the salary comes from the state, and then each of the LEAs or charters matches that salary, that loaded salary and benefits, with 20%. And that's kind of the budget model it's been for the past 10 years. There's something coming through the legislature right now which might shift that up a little bit, but right now that's the current model. So again, we have, and I went over the numbers with Murray last week, out of 105 charters, we've got about 47 charters. And, you know, the way I see it is the rest of y'all are kind of leaving money on the table, but I'm not going to say that. So I just said that, and it's being recorded. So yes, I did say that. And what I would love to talk about is really the benefits. It's a side-by-side teaching model. And so the art teacher works with the classroom teacher to design what the core competencies they want to cover, design the hands-on experiential arts engagement that ties into science or reading or mathematics. While they're learning, they're going deep in their discipline of whatever art form is, dance or music, visual arts or theater, as well as really changing the culture of the school through the arts. And I'm going to turn it over. I think I've been talking too long and fiddling with the technology. I'm going to turn it over to Lisa Clough with Artworks for Kids to really talk about the impact. It's a public-private partnership, so we work with the state, and then we also work with Artworks for Kids, and we work with all of you. So Lisa, this is the impact. Why don't you talk about some of the benefits of the BTS Arts program?
Great. So those of you that have the program know a little bit about the structure with our university partners. So it has a wonderful professional development piece with these partners that the Sorensen family endowed chairs at 7 of our universities across the state. And these endowed chairs provide the professional development for your BTS educator in your school. Artworks for Kids helps provide the advocacy and lobbying support for the program, and then the state administers the program. What you would have heard in our wonderful video is that there are so many benefits and impacts to the program that teachers as well as students are more engaged when BTS Arts is part of their school. It brings parents out, and it gives students a reason to be at school. They really enjoy the arts and participating. We have found that it helps increase literacy as well as numeracy tests with students, that they do better in school when the arts are included. And as Lori mentioned, it's arts integration, so it's part of each of the core subjects in school. It helps increase students' social and emotional growth. And we have just seen the benefits across the board. I would love to hear, though, from you. Many of you have put questions here in the chat, and I want to be sure that we answer those. And if we have anyone online that would like to talk about the benefits that they've seen in their school, that would be wonderful as well. Do some of you want to come off mute and just ask some of the questions that you've put here in the chat?
Yeah, I have a question. Turn this on. So the question I have is, how much does this grant actually pay for? Is it for a full-time teacher or is it for a half-time teacher? And is it for half of that half-time teacher? That's where I get a little confused about this grant.
Yeah, the answer is yeah. So part of it has to do with what a school wants to invest in the program. So it's all of those things, Anthony. Some schools have some schools have a 0.5 art teacher because that's what they can afford. Some have a full-time art teacher. Some of our schools are arts-centered. We have actually an arts charter school whose charter is arts, and they have 4, arts specialists, and one is a BTS specialist. So it's actually a differentiated model where we work with each of the LEAs and the charters to figure out what you need, what you want, what you can afford, and then how the state can support your learning goals.
So I have full-time art teachers in all of my schools, and I've never applied for this grant because it seemed like quite a lot of like required curriculum from the program, and for a small percentage of their salary they would actually be paid for. So let's just say I have an example. I do want to do the whole BTS model, and I have a full-time art teacher in each of my schools. Would it pay for half of one of my art teachers or for half of both of my art teachers?
It would pay for 80% of both of your art teachers.
Okay, we would just have to do the whole BTS model where we're teaching different subjects in art as well, right?
Well, it's an integrated model. So, the benefits are that you're getting the arts and you're also reinforcing other core subjects. So you wouldn't silo the arts in your educational curriculum too. This is just music and we're just learning, rhythm and notes. You would actually be tying rhythm into mathematics, or you would be tying pitch into acoustics and physics. So, I think there's added benefits in that there's, as Lisa said, there's a lot of professional learning that happens both for the classroom teacher as well as for the BTS arts educators. So it kind of creates a more holistic curriculum.
Okay, thanks.
Lori, can I ask you also to clarify on that one? With Anthony's school, I'm not sure, is that just, because I think this goes with his question too. If you have a full-time art teacher though, and we're a K-9 model, it's really only geared at the elementary teaching assignments. Is that not correct? So if you have a full-time art teacher that's teaching K through 9, their 7th through 9th would not be included in that percentage either. Is that accurate?
That's correct. It would be K6. Yes. So if you have K9, I guess we would pay for 80% of the K6.
Right. Okay. That's what we've currently done, which has been beneficial. We've enjoyed it, but I just wanted to clarify that because some of the charters have similar grade configurations as I do.
Yeah, that's really great. Maybe I should stop sharing my screen so I can see whatever's going on in the chat. Oh, stop. And now I can read the chat. Hello. Yeah, great. Other questions? Thank you.
I just have more of a comment.
Yeah.
I'm at Early Light Academy and we have a fantastic BTS arts teacher. I know Lisa Clough has actually been here before and we appreciate her visiting, but we love this program and she does a phenomenal job of integrating any concept that, state standard that the teachers are working on. She works very closely with our K6 teachers to create lessons and they'll team teach a lot of the time. And it is a phenomenal program. And I mean, I can just attest to the benefit of it because what the kids are learning in class and they're going to be tested on, they've got this song that they perform. And so the kids all know everything for their test. And we've just seen it work so well. In fact, we've had many teachers come observe her. We had a cohort from Alpine District come recently, and there were 15 or so, 12 to 15 teachers that came to observe her. So we'd be happy anytime to set that up, if you want to come see how she does that, we'd be happy to. I can put my email in the chat and you're welcome to reach out and we can coordinate something.
Thank you, Stephanie. And I want to go back to a minute to Anthony's comment. I think there's a perception that it's harder than it is. And we're actually looking at some barriers research. And so I'd be really interested. Yeah, I think in the early years, it was like, you got to do this and you got to do this and you got to do this. And yes, we need salary assurances and there is professional learning involved. So it is that extra hoop. And I will say, integration takes more time. It does take more energy and 1 + 1 = 3. And it does take more effort from the classroom teacher, a commitment from the administration, as well as the arts educator than just teaching in their lane. And as Stephanie said, I think that the benefits speak to themselves, but it is more intensive. And so one of the things Lisa and I are trying to get at is how can we reduce the administrative burden? How can we reduce the, kind of the administrivia that isn't necessary to make it more accessible for your students? That's a conversation stopper. Angie, thanks for that comment. Okay, Marie, I think.
Lori, just so we can have it on our audio record and on our recording, just a few of the other questions, just making sure that we've got the right answers here. So if a school is already running an arts program, they're still eligible to apply, that's correct?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah. So Anthony's model is very similar to what we have in many of our schools, where there's more than one arts educator on a campus. And one of the arts educators or two of the arts educators are BTS arts educators, and then the other 1 or 2 are not, and that's perfectly fine. And it's all about supporting your learning and curricular and kind of community goals for your, what kind of vibe you want in your school.
Perfect. And there was one a little further up that just had said that they've had art from the beginning. They were told they wouldn't qualify for funding since that was like part of their charter. They were curious if that was true or if that was like a misinformed statement there. Or if they had an art and music program that was already taught at their school, is that something they can still bring in at this time?
I think so, yeah. Lisa, maybe you can speak to it. You can go from a music program to a BTS music program. I think that's absolutely allowed. Is that the question?
It sounds like that is, and we have recently restructured the language on supplanting. That might have been the problem, several years ago.
Oh, yeah.
That has since been removed from the language. So yes, we would love to have you apply.
Yeah, and Lisa, let's speak to the supplant language. In the past, you had to actually have like a 0.5, in your school in order to get funding. And what we're seeing is, some of these little bitty schools can't afford a 0.5. And so we are now allowing artists in residence to come in and do targeted specific curricular integration with your students. So if you want to do like a 2-week project or a 1-week project or a 3-week, we can work with you in that way as well for more targeted integration.
Fantastic. And then the last one that I see in here that I just want to make sure we have on our record was a question about if online schools are eligible. And it does look like the answer was yes, online is also eligible for this.
It is. And during COVID, we actually did do online integrated instruction. And we had this conversation last week that we would love to get back to supporting all of our students across the state, including our online learners.
Wonderful. I think that takes us through the questions that I'm seeing in there. Any other questions from our directors that they want to get answered?
I just have one quick question. If we already have our art program, can I take my current art teacher and train them in BTS?
Absolutely. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. The art teacher has to want to do it, but yeah. It's
Okay.
like my one joke, like how many psychologists does it take to change a light bulb? Well, it only takes one, but the light bulb has to really want to change, right? Bada boom.
Yes. Thank you.
Esther did drop a good one in there too. What is the application process and deadline? I think in your slide it said it's due in the spring.
It is.
That's
It's
early spring, late spring,
well,
groundhog.
it's great. And it was ambiguous because we can't start the next year until the legislative session wraps. So I will say not before the middle of March, it's not going to get released. So I would say mid-March to mid-April, that would be kind of the sweet spot is my best guess. But until we know how the program's going to be funded next year, we kind of have to do a wait and see on that. But typically, as soon as the session wraps, we get going on the next year. Does that answer your question? Great. Yeah, and I will say the fine arts team, we now have a designated specialist whose primary job is BTS Arts, and we can put that in the chat as well, and you can reach out to her anytime as well as Lisa and myself.
Perfect. And perhaps after a session wraps up, we can invite you guys back and just give a quick update to our directors as well, and let them know any other things that came out of session, and celebrate hopefully getting some additional applications in.
Yeah, a little bit more funding for all of us. And I will say, in talking to Paul right before the semester break, we talked about how this program is really good for increasing attendance as well as academic goals. And we talked a little bit about math scores and how important that is. And so, I think there's a lot of entry points to this program. And what I love about it is that it allows all students to flourish, wherever they come in. And so it's not really about producing great artists. It's about producing great students who thrive.
Wonderful. Well, Lori and Lisa, thank you so much for being here and for sharing about the Beverly Taylor Sorensen Arts Program and the Artworks for Kids. That looks like some great things that we have available to our schools. So I'm sure our directors will be in touch if they have questions. And we thank you for being at directors meeting today.
Thank you.
All right, well, moving right along, we do have Stephanie Freeman here, and she is from ACE Scholarships. And I will let her introduce more about what that is and what her role is with ACE Scholarships. And she's going to be talking about the Utah Fits All Scholarship. And then there's also some handouts that she had that I'm actually going to hit send on right now, and those will be hitting your inbox. So Stephanie, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Marie. I'm Stephanie Freeman, and I am the executive director for the Utah State Utah Fits All program with ACE Scholarships. What I'm here to explain today is a little bit about the Utah Fits All program, how students qualify, and then maybe how your charter schools could play a role in that if you so desire. So I do have a screen that I can share with you. Let me grab that if I can find it. Let's see what we got. Okay. I'll get that up to full screen. Sorry, it takes me just a moment because there's always something in the way. So let me move that where I can control it a little bit better. While I'm doing that, and let me give you a little bit of background. I have taught at BYU for the last 33 and a half years. I'm still technically adjunct faculty there, but left my director role in December when ACE Scholarships hired me. So I'm excited to be a part of this program. Education has always been a vital part of my life. I've always loved everything about education. And background wise with my own family, I was raised in public schools. There were really other options. I actually had a very good experience. My children all experienced different things, anything from going to Mountain Heights Academy. Hello, Delana. I had students there. I had students in the public school. I had some doing their early associate's degrees through their local schools. So we had all different kinds of experiences, even in private programs that were after school programs. So this scholarship would have been a great opportunity for some of my children who weren't actually ever full-time in the public school system. Utah Fits All, as you are aware, was put in through the House Bill 215 this last January. And it is, right now, they're making a few adjustments to it. And so how that plays out with some of the cleanup bill may affect how we actually use the scholarship. And so there might be a few adjustments in this presentation because that may change before the end of this month. So it came about, as I just explained, each scholarship student would receive a $8,000 award. There are only 5,000 scholarships for the year 2024 through 25. ACE Scholarships was chosen as the program manager and hired in November. So we've been quickly pulling everything together as best we can. One of the things that is complete is the provider handbook that was just sent to you. We finished that at the end of January, and it was published at the beginning of February. Who's eligible for the scholarship? Well, a Utah resident who is in grades K through 12. They need to be at least 5 years old by September 2nd. And there is some extension up to 22 years in special circumstances. They should not be enrolled full-time in a public school. Now, this is one of the things that's in the cleanup bill currently, and that is that they cannot be enrolled at the time that they receive the scholarship at all. So that means even part-time. That would mean that they would actually be using their scholarship funds if they go to any of the LEAs, so a public school or the charter schools. They should not be receiving the Carson Scholarship or the Special Needs Opportunity Scholarship. And that's also a bill that's being proposed that those may actually be combined. So those are public scholarships and they would have to choose. They can actually apply for all three, but they have to choose in that school year which one they would use. So with the 5,000 scholarships that we have, according to the law, there is a preference in the order of the scholarships will be given. The first preference category for this year is going to be for all of those students whose families are at the 200% federal poverty level or less. You can see the chart to the side where that would place them according to the number size of family that they have. That is the first category. The next category will be awarded is between the 200 and 555% level. That opens it to a great population here in Utah. So you can see on the right-hand column there that the income for families goes up greatly. And so there'll be a lot of students that will qualify for this. If we have more applicants than we have awards, there'll be a lottery. The application is actually opens up for families on February 28th, and it will close on April 15th. And then on April 18th, families will actually know if they received a scholarship and if not, where they are at in the lottery. So someone who may be second in the lottery may hope that someone drops out and they will, plan accordingly. Someone who is 300 in the lottery would probably have an alternative plan for their education for the 24-25 year. And then the last category is that's open to everyone. So regardless of income, anyone can qualify for that if they meet the earlier eligibility requirements as outlined. In 2025 to 26, those categories will change slightly. So the first is that eligible students who actually had a scholarship in 24-25 can stay in the scholarship program. They do not have to reapply. They just have to renew their scholarship intent. Then it will go to what it was this year at the 200% level for the next category. The third category is an added category for that year, which is that eligible siblings of the previous scholarship students are also eligible in that preference category. And then it opens again to the last two categories that we covered earlier, which is the 555% poverty level, and then open to everyone. And from what we've seen in the appropriations recently is that they are proposing of maybe at least doubling it for the following year. How it works is that scholarship students would receive the $8,000 up front in early August, so that they'll be able to pay tuition or start purchasing curriculum. Those are put into an ESA account, so it obviously does not go to the parents' account to be used as they will, but it's actually put into a digital wallet. Families will pay qualified providers directly from the student's account through that digital wallet. We'll have a marketplace where providers can apply, whether that's private schools, charter schools, district schools. It can be tutors, all kinds of different things that are in the marketplace, as well as vendors that would supply educational materials. They'll be able to shop for those educational supplies in the marketplace. Those are pre-approved ones, and so they're able to receive invoices directly from the providers, and then they will pay with the providers directly from that digital wallet. There's other options for them. If they have things that are not in the marketplace, they can also get pre-approved expenses, and they can also get reimbursements for things that they pay for themselves. The funds should be used in the year given. They do not roll over to the new year. They actually go back into the program so we can offer more scholarships to students. The marketplace is a great resource for the students and their families. It's convenient because the turnaround time for payment is quite quick. So it's usually 6 to 8 business days that providers receive their payments. Families can give provider referrals. So if they can't see a provider in there, we can refer them and they can apply to become a qualified provider. Families can review services as well. That's part of the law, that they are able to review the quality of the services that they receive. As indicated, some things are still being determined right now as we're doing the cleanup bill. So we'll be able to see maybe a few little tweaks or changes that are here and there. There are 14 allowable categories for educational expenses in the law. And so we're not going to go through all 14. They're in that handbook that was sent to you, as well as in the brochure that's there. You can see a variety of them. But generally, it's going to cover anything that's tuition or curriculum. It will cover school uniforms. So a lot of charter schools have school uniform requirements. It would be able to cover that as well. It covers the invoice for school materials, for tutoring services, and then there's definitely things that it will not qualify. And that's why on that last category on the right side, you'll see a little game controller. There's certain things that they cannot purchase, obviously, with their funds. And so we try to keep some guardrails up so that we're making sure that these are being used according to the 14 categories in the law. Currently, the Utah Fits All, it has the qualifying provider application already up. So when you go into the application to become a qualified provider, it's intuitive and it will take you in different directions. So if you're a school that has more than 150 students, you'll have different questions and documentation that will be required. If you're a school with under 150 students, then it will take you in another direction. And then of course, vendors will do something different. In addition, you can actually apply for different types of things. So if you actually provide an after-school program and you wanted to run that separately, then you would run your day school program. You could actually apply for those separately, and they would fall in different categories as a qualifying provider for the Utah Fits All. I told you the application opened already. That is an ongoing thing. It remains open from here on out. So the marketplace will grow. Providers will increase as families have a demand. We anticipate the program growing, as I indicated. Senator Cullimore and Representative Perucci asked just a week ago for $150 million for the program. That came back with a suggestion of an increase of $50.5 million. So it sits at $93 million for the 25-26 program. There's some negotiations going on that at where it will stand. But each year it will grow, hopefully according to demand, so that it does become a Utah Fits All. As we think about the different ways that maybe charter schools could use the Utah Fits All or be able to allow them to come, some of the things that crossed my mind was back when my daughter was interested in taking some classes, we went to our local charter school and asked, can she take the Chinese course? She wanted to learn Chinese. And there was a minimum enrollment that was required at the time for her to be able to participate. And because of other educational goals that she had, the charter school then was not really an option for us. Had the charter school the flexibility to admit her into the class because she was able to pay for the class herself and not rely upon the state funds in the other ways, then that would have been maybe a possibility for her to be able to take that course. But I know that there's a lot of different considerations that needs to be looked at from a charter school's perspective to decide how they want to implement Utah Fits All in their programs if they choose to do so. So that is the presentation I have for now. Are there questions that I can answer for you?
Yeah, Stephanie, I have a question. Thank you.
Yes.
I guess I missed something. I'm not clear. Why would a student not just enter a charter school or dual enroll in a charter school under the normal sort of process for that? Why would they go through this avenue where we're funded the WPU for every student that comes to us? What would I guess I don't see why they would go through the Utah Fits All scholarship program to come to a charter school.
And that is correct, right? You receive the WPU funds for the students. So if you have, let's say you have one family that has a charter school student that is enrolled, and they have a sibling that would want to come and take maybe just 1 or 2 classes at the school, it would give the family flexibility to allow the other child to join the sibling in the school. The fact is that charter schools right now do not have that flexibility to allow a part-time student. It is something that hasn't really been thought about much because everything relies on the WPUs that you receive. In the bill, it says that a student can't have a WPU if they have a Utah Fits All scholarship. And we were told that we would have to prorate the scholarships, but currently the cleanup bill is saying that they cannot be enrolled at all, that instead, the district schools and charter schools would need to be providers in the program for students to be able to participate in any of those schools. If you have something like an after-school program or a choir that you want to open up to additional students, or you have other courses that are lower enrollment that other students would be interested in enrolling, this is something that you would be able to allow additional students to attend the school and be able to participate in those courses if that's something that you choose to do. The thing that's also in the law is that a school does not have to allow a student from Utah Fits All into their school. Delana.
Well, thank you for the presentation, Stephanie. It's good to see you again. I just want to make sure that I'm understanding it. I had some similar questions to Steve. What it sounds like is that if we wanted to participate, we could function perhaps as a course provider, a tuition paying course provider, and the Utah Fits All scholarship would be the tuition that would pay for that student, that would not go into UTREX or Aspire or any of the SIS systems. We're not accountable to test them. We're not accountable. They don't count against us for graduation. They're just a student accessing something we have to offer, and they're paying for it. Do I understand that correctly?
Yes, that is true. You do not have to test them. You don't have to give them per se a transcript, right, that they would have to qualify for. They would actually be taking the course. I mean, if they're aim is to get a diploma, right, to graduate from high school, they may actually request that from you, but that all those negotiations would be between you and the student and their parents. You would not have to go through Utah Fits All to meet those particular requirements at all. And as you say, especially like with something like Mountain Heights, you know, I had one student go through the entire program, and that was Jeff, right? All the other students that I had that went through that program, they actually only did it part-time. So they would take the honors English, or they would take another class that they were interested in to be able to get certain credits that they were earning towards graduation or to enhance their education. But they weren't enrolled full time. And so that funding you received was different because they were only allowed to take up to 2. And I think that was through the COPS, right? Or is it the SOEP, right? Program that would pay for that. Mm-hmm. And I'm still working on that with Corey to find out how that plays in for homeschooled students, if they still have access through that, or if they're going to have to pay through their Utah Fits All scholarship, since seems like it would be double dipping if they didn't pay for with those Utah Fits All funds.
Okay, that was going to be my next question, because there is a pot of money that goes to pay for homeschool students to access statewide online, but that would only be for the 5 providers in the state. So I'll catch up with you on that afterwards and not take up everybody's time here.
But I think that's a really good question, because that question still comes up with everyone else, as if, you know, if a student's coming and they just want to come and take choir, or if they want to come and take the math class, or they want to take the Chinese class, you know, is there a place for those Utah Fits All students in your program, and how will they pay for it? Well, they will pay for it with their scholarship funds. And so you would simply have a cost or a charge, just like you would receive with your WPU, in a similar way. If you were like a district school, which actually works that into consideration for part-time, then charter schools would have the same opportunities that the district schools have to be able to bring extra students into their programs. Jenny Lynn?
I just had a budget question on that. So does that mean that there would be rules to how then the school could spend that funding, because it's now private school funding going into the public sector? And maybe you could provide some clarification on how that would work as far as budget categories and appropriate use for those funds.
So the funds are paying for the course itself, right? And so however you appropriate those funds within your school already, when you receive funds for students normally, right, they would cover certain charges in the school. The students coming into the program are responsible to follow whatever the program asks. So if you require a uniform, they would have to have a uniform when they come to that one class, but they would be purchasing those things with their scholarship funds as well. And they're not it's not a private scholarship. It's still public money that comes from the income tax that's been appropriated. There's been $42.5 million for the 24-25 year, and then we'll see what happens with the 25-26 year. But those funds that come to you are for you to use to be able to pay for whatever that student is utilizing when they come to your school. How that looks like on the books, I think might be the challenge, right? To say, if we do something part-time, you know, how do we put a student into the system? And I think, again, similar to what Delana just mentioned, you know, where there are the online classes that are provided, right? 1 or 2 classes. I think this would look something similar to that, where if a student wanted to come in and participate, it would be, you know, how does that look? And it might be a similar charge. And I know in the law, if you go to that SOEP page where you can see some of the charges that are there are specific charges for like driver's education, or a specific charge for other types of classes. And so it'd be as simple as deciding as a school, you know, how much does it really cost to a student to come and take a course? And then you would charge the student for that course, and they would pay it. It would be a direct payment, because you would become a qualified provider, and then you would receive those funds into your budget.
I had a quick question about at the high school level, if somebody were to come in and say participate in a performing arts or even an extracurricular activity, how would that speak to some of the eligibility requirements for them to compete? So for instance, if they wanted to be, with the school in solo and ensemble, would they be considered part of the school's team, so to speak? And then my other question is how would we know that student wants to participate in the program, and could they enroll throughout the term or the semester? Because I think those could be some challenges in terms of having students coming in and out of the program as the courses are offered.
I agree. I think it would be a challenge if they come in and then they disappear. And so you could actually set standards as a school that's between you and any of the students that would be applying or asking to participate. It's Utah law that students are able to participate in extracurricular activities, right? They can do that anyway, whether they're homeschooled, no matter, or private schooled. That is an opportunity that they have to be able to participate. So this would be similar, that they're able to participate, but you can set up that contract directly with the parents to say, if you come into, the choir program, then you're required to be here for an entire semester. Or if you decided that it should be for the year, if you come in for the year, this is the expectations that we have. If a student drops out, then you can charge them. It'd be prorated for the amount of participation that they were in a class or in a program. And then you could just reimburse the scholarship funds if they disappeared. If it's one that doesn't matter as much, right? Obviously, some of those extracurriculars, if they're part of a team, then you expect that participation to last longer.
Stephanie, did you say that they would not be part of this, the sort of state kind of student data systems that we use to track like attendance and that sort of thing? Are they they're not able to be in that system that we use to track all of our other students? Is that correct?
That is a good question, and I need to look at that. I meet with the state board with Todd Call, and I can check on that, because it seems like there should be some legal things that would be there that would show that they are on your property, right? Other than that, but it's an issue of the funding, and that's the only thing. So they shouldn't have a WPU from the state, but rather they'd be paying with their own funds. And I think that's the only difference. So I think they could be in the system, because I think there's some other ramifications that would be important to have them there. But I do not think that they would have to be there for the purposes of the funding.
They might be able to just do a different designation, like in UTREX, the SOEP students have an SOEP designation, and they don't generate whatever a full-time student would generate as far as WPU and stuff is concerned. So that might be a good conversation.
Right. And that's a conversation I'm having with Corey right now to find out exactly how we're going to designate them and how those payments will occur.
Thank you.
Brendan.
Hi, Stephanie. I work for the Utah State Charter School Board, and I just had a quick question of clarification. Just so I heard you correctly, you said the districts and charters can both be providers.
Absolutely.
And has the districts been given guidance on the cost of fees outside of driver's ed? You mentioned driver's ed as an example, but has the districts been given guidance on costs for things outside of something like that?
So there's a link, and I'm not sure if I still have it up. Maybe I can post it in the chat for one of the, let's see if it's here, that I was looking just at today. Let me see if I can find it, because there's a lot of things being opened.
And you could simply say, yes, they have been given, and that's fine.
So there are, but there's a specific link in the law, and I'm not sure I'm seeing it right now. Here that actually lists all of the fees for students who end up taking something similar to like taking it through the SOEP, right? That they're able to be charged directly for where the ELA, the LEA is actually are charged a fee that they end up paying in behalf of those, the district schools. And there's a list of those. The question is whether that charge would go then directly to the Utah Fits All scholarship that the student holds, as opposed to the charter school or the district. And my thought is in this circumstance, the students would be charged directly for those fees.
Actually, my question is more of a protection of the charter schools in terms of transparency for how much they're charging. Because I could see a situation where some schools are charging thousands for something that other schools are charging 500, but if nobody knows who's charging what, how do we protect the charter schools so that at least there's some sort of transparency in what's going on? So that's kind of the basis of my question.
And we're still working through that, so I can't answer that one yet, but I am writing that one down so that we can make sure that we get that answered.
Thank you for that.
And just to be clear, in terms of a student participating in this program, kind of like the SUAP, where they actually get a grade or a transcript, the participation is in a way voluntary. So is the school providing any form of recognition for completion of those courses at all? And I guess that's the piece that's still kind of up in the air for me.
So oftentimes the reason why students will take the courses, at least in I have one particular child that was enrolled in 7 different schools throughout high school. And that wasn't because she didn't love, one particular school. It was just her objective to get her associate's degree. And it was her objective to take like a Japanese class that wasn't offered at the local district school. So she was off in different ways. And so her goal was to graduate both from the university as well as from the high school with a transcript. So for her, transcripts made a difference. I think it depends on who you're working with. I think there are homeschoolers who would want to maybe take a course and not be interested in a transcript. They may actually be doing those from their own homeschool in the way that they do them. So I think that's something that is a discussion between the charter and the parent to decide, what is wanted there and what you're willing to offer. I know this is a new thing to wrap our minds around, because it is for me. I've only been doing this since, like I said, Christmas. So there's a lot of things still to be worked out, and maybe even things to think in terms of, does Utah Fits All fit with charter schools? But I do think that there are circumstances where they would, and that is something that you can start to think about now. We know that there's only 5,000 scholarships coming out this year, so the chances of a student coming to you and asking to take a class at your school might be a little lower this year as opposed to 2 years from now. So I think we can probably learn too as we go, how it works, and maybe if there's charter schools where it's worked successfully, they'll be able to say, hey, this is what we did. We have an after-school program, or we opened up, some extracurriculars even during the class hours, right, to Utah Fits All or students, and this is what our experience has been. So it's brand new, and it's going to take a little bit for us to wrap our minds around, how it plays a role in the charter schools. Any other questions? So the provider handbooks should have been sent to you in an email. They have a lot of information to show you how to apply if you desire to apply. There was also a 2-page brochure that's available to you. If this is something you're interested in and you would like me to come visit with you, visit with parents, if you would like any of those, we also have family trifolds similar to what I sent to you. That's the provider trifold. If those are things that you're interested in, I'd be happy to share those with you, and you're always welcome to reach out to me to get additional questions answered. I will take the questions that were posed here that I wasn't able to answer today, and I will get those answered, and I'll communicate those back to Marie so that she can have those answers for you. And as more information comes out and as the cleanup bill gets finished, we'll be able to know exactly maybe how some of those funds will flow and how you'll be able to charge for those, and maybe a little more uniformity on the fees as well. I appreciate meeting with you. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Stephanie. We are now getting very ahead of schedule, about an hour. And so we've got our team messaging our next presenter to see if she's available to come on early, as well as our final presenter. And so we will see real quick what is happening there. Shannon, thank you for that offer. Do you want to talk a little bit about some upcoming trainings? Thank you so much.
I'd be happy to. Give me just 1 minute to pull up my screen that I shared earlier today. One moment. Okay, Marie, can you see the screen of the upcoming trainings?
Yes, that looks great.
Perfect. Okay. I just want to share with you a couple of the things that we've got coming down the pipeline. Of course, we have our ongoing pre-operational training the second Tuesday of every month. Tomorrow's meeting will be on branding and marketing the schools. Our administrative lunch seminar this month is going to be on the 21st of February. I'm pretty excited about this one because we talk a lot about artificial intelligence and how we're using AI in the schools. And we've got Tyler Bastian who will be joining us for this particular training on how to prepare teachers to be ahead of that curve. And it's actually a two-part training. So he will be doing the February training and our March training on the same topic, going a little deeper dive in March on that topic. So if that's something you're curious about or something that you're looking to use and want to know how to use it effectively, we'd love to have you join us for that training. We have an ongoing book study, the actionable feedback to K-12 teachers. And that we've got two more sessions. We've got one coming in February, and then we've got one in March. We've also just begun our Spring ACES class. And our class on Wednesday will be human resources and what new directors need to know. And then at the end of the month, we'll be talking about special education law. So if you or anyone in your building is interested in moving into administration, this course is for them. I know we've talked a lot about it in the past, probably 12 months, but this course is specifically designed to give those who are interested in moving into administrative roles a little bit of information, a little bit of taste of what it would be. So another idea is to consider people within your building who might be a good fit for an administrative role or somebody you might want to delegate responsibilities to, and invite them to join us with this. This should give them a good idea of what that would look like. Two items that are coming down the pipeline that we'll give you more information about as things are finalized. The first one being for boards. So if your school board is a new or a developing school board, we would love to have them join us for the strategic planning session. And it's going to be an on-site, in person. And our purpose there is to be able to get really granular on what school boards need to be doing when they develop their strategic plan. That will be April 17th in the central Utah County area. More information on that will come. But if you have a new board, just feel free to share that information with them. And then our last on this slide is our spring administrative retreat that we hold in Lehigh each April. That will be on April 18th from 8:30 to about 3:30. Most likely we will be done by 3. I've put down here 3:30 to kind of give us a little bit of space and to set that expectation. We are looking at classes on or training on behavior, using student data, setting culture, and things like that. So more information will be coming and a registration link will be sent out as soon as all of that is finalized as well. So a lot of things coming down that are exciting. I will add in the group chat the Spring ACES course link. So if you want to register or if you want to share it with somebody else, that information will be in the group chat. Thanks, Marie.
Thank you, Shannon. And then it looks like Holly from Land Trust is ready to go. So thank you, Holly, and thank you to the Charter Board staff for helping us get that coordinated. And I know Shannon is also reaching out to our final presenter to see if he can move his schedule up a little bit. So we will turn the time over to Holly from School Land Trust.
Thanks, Marie. So I, excuse me, want to start by just expressing our gratitude as we are working through final reports. There have been some hiccups, and there's a new one today where some of the reported expenditures are not showing anymore. So if that is your school, we are aware of the problem and we are working to get it fixed. I am going to put in the chat the link to this slideshow because it does have resources for you at the end. Excuse me, sorry. So just to remind you, final reports, they are due all the way up to the state level by March 1st. That includes the directors filling out their portion. Talking to your board about the implementation of last year's plan. And it doesn't need to be a full report or an approval. It is simply just letting the board members know this is what you approved, this is how it went, and this is kind of where we are at this point in time. And in your final report, it is reporting on your measurements. Remember that with the questions, you only do need to answer one of the 2 that are there. And then your action steps, if you were able to complete those as described, you would click yes. If there was a change in funding or some sort of issue that came in, you would click no, and then it opens up a text box where you do an explanation for why those action steps were not met as planned. After the final report is due, I will be sending out this LEA assurance the week of March 4th. And then once that assurance is complete, that is when you will be able to move on to your upcoming plan. Part of the LEA assurance is that board members have been trained, and we are currently working on getting that training posted on our website and sent out to the board members. So that is coming. I'm hoping that it will be sent out sometime next week, but definitely before the beginning of March. And with this upcoming, oh, let me go back, sorry. With your upcoming plan piece, that does follow the same approval process as any amendments and also what last year's were. So it starts with your council, whether it's your governing board or an elected council, they will create the school land trust plan. Then it needs to be approved by the governing board if they were not the ones that created it. At that point, that's where the new role change for the business administrators comes in again, where the business administrator will do the approval for the LEA, and then it comes to us, the School Children's Trust at the state level. So when your board does their approval for that, there does need to be a council signature form that is presented. And so this was previously created and maintained at the state level through the School Land Trust website. And it was just last year when it was changed. And the changes that now districts and charter schools are required to design and distribute their own signature pages. So with that, the requirements on this form or for this form are that it must be an LEA prepared form. The signatures will be collected at the meeting where the council approved the upcoming plan for School Land Trust, or it could even be a meeting after the plan was created, but it does need to be provided to the Charter Governing Board when you are presenting your plan for approval. Then it needs to be retained at your location for 3 years. We have also heard that there are schools where they will just upload it as an attachment for their upcoming plan. That way it is connected to the plan year that it belongs to. And then with the governing boards, if they are serving as your Charter Trust Land Council, they do not need to do that signature sheet because it's kind of redundant where they're signing saying, yes, we created the plan, we agree with it, and then presenting it to themselves. So that's where the governing board, if they're serving as your Trust Land Council, are exempt from that. Your timeline requirements. We have added a new timeline. We realized that we were really focusing on governing boards and not so much as your elected Charter Trust Land Council. So we do have this new one. It's the one over on the right. And that is just helping you guide your elected Trust Land Council or even your governing board if they need a reminder of what their responsibilities are for this point in the school year. And then, as always, if you have any questions, please reach out and contact us. Again, we really do appreciate your patience and your understanding as we are having our technical difficulties with our website. And then, like I said, the very last page, I have the links for the 3 different timelines. There is information about the council signature requirement. And then we also have a template that you can use for your school if needed. And are there any questions? Okay, well, if you have anything, please contact us. And Marie, that concludes what I have today.
Thank you so much, Holly. We appreciate it. All right. Well, we are to our last one. It looks like we haven't quite heard back from him yet. Shannon, do you know the topic he was going to present on? Is that something we could maybe brainstorm some questions about?
So he was going to be training on innovation in our schools and a little bit of thinking outside the box. I'm going to step away and call one more time and see if I can't get him on the line. So give me one moment.
Perfect. Thank you. So that might be something, if you have questions about innovation or some innovative things that you're doing at your school that you want to be able to share about, then perhaps that's something you can jot down some questions and be prepared to share with Dale and the team when Shannon gets back. Maybe right now everyone can stop, grab a drink, check your emails, whatever you need, and we will hop back as soon as we are able to get a hold of Professor Cox.
So
that was awesome.
He's been so flexible and good to work with.
I will say I have some great meetings with Dale, and I know that Dale is extremely flexible, and that is fantastic.
So let me do a quick introduction while he takes a second to collect and get ready, mentally ready. So Dr. Cox joins us from UVU. He'll be discussing innovation in our schools, and I'll let him be a little bit more specific than that. But Dr. Cox has over 40 years of educational experience, first in Arizona, and then in China, and now back in Utah with UVU. He teaches courses in improving school culture and school operations. And today, again, like I mentioned, he'll be discussing innovations and things like that in our schools. So Dr. Cox, thank you for one, joining us, and two, for jumping on a little early. We appreciate your efforts. And I'm going to turn the time to you. When he's done, we'll just do a quick follow-up and then turn the time back to Marie.
Very
Thank
good.
you so much.
And there it is. I was saying, I'm elderly now, and I can't see your faces, so I hope that on occasion my attempts at humor and so forth there'll be some response. But your photographs don't you know how it is to try to teach a group on a screen. But I'm really excited to be here with you, and I will now share my screen, and we'll get started. Let me begin with a little bit of a comment that I feel I should make in terms of my respect for your work. My career has been in running schools and developing schools, not in higher education. And when I was brought to UVU, the instruction I was given was that UVU wanted to create a program that was closely aligned with what the schools in the area were doing, that was meeting their needs for leadership preparation and had a very practical hands-on focus. And that's why they hired a practitioner instead of a research scholar. And I have had a great time over the past 5 years as we've created our master's program. So we have a certificate program for people who already have a master's degree, and that's done in 3 semesters. And then we have a full master's degree in ed leadership, and both qualify for the state credential. So I got to help create the program and now teach it and lead it. And I have a great deal of respect for all of you and the work you're doing in charter schools. And we've had quite a few students in our program from charter schools. My own children attended charter school in Arizona. My wife worked there as well. And my years overseas, 13 years in China, I was working with independent schools, independent international schools who were teaching a Western curriculum in China and Southeast Asia. And that was fun. And that's where I kind of got a taste of what charter schools can do that is harder in a public setting. So that's the perspective I'm coming from. And I encourage you to, and I think, Shani, you said you'll monitor the chat for questions or comments,
Yes.
threats, whatever may crop up.
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You can all see my screen, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. When we use the word innovation and we talk about schools, my own experience over the years has been that it's kind of natural for people to go first to technology and to see that as innovation. And certainly it is a critical part of innovation and a great enabler of innovation. But the shift that I think you probably have come to, that I certainly did, was that innovation in schools is about transforming learning and changing what we do and how we do it and doing it better for our students. And technology can be a big part of that, but it isn't an end in and of itself. Now, I was a principal in Arizona when No Child Left Behind came along. And at the risk, and maybe I don't care if I sound negative, but it seemed like No Child Left Behind had this as its aspiration. You know, massive standardization. We're going to have, and we needed some of that in education, certainly. But I kind of like this one better, this picture. In this picture, it isn't random, it isn't uncultivated, it isn't without intention, but it is personalized, individualized. It involves a lot more complexity and creativity, and it has, I think, a greater beauty to it. And this or this. And is it an either or proposition? Can you have some of this that's necessary and still add some of this? I have 4 children who are teachers, 2 in Utah and 2 in Arizona. And so I listen in and get some insights into how their experiences in the classrooms, 2 secondary, 2 elementary. We have a nice balance. And they talk a lot about the pressure to do this, the testing culture that we have, and how that drives decision-making, drives resources and so forth. And I don't think in there, what I observed from them, and as I've worked with my students, I think we would do well to think a little more about this kind of an approach to education that allows for individualization, that allows for variation, and that nurtures different kinds of strengths and beauty. All right. So that's kind of my overview, my introduction. Tony Wagner at Harvard spent a number of years talking to great innovators in a variety of fields. And you may have read this book. It's been around for a while. And as he did so, he tried to identify patterns and things going on in the lives growing up of these people who become great innovators, problem solvers in a variety of fields in the world. And he came to this, and when I first saw this, it put me off. I thought, nah, I'm kind of a traditional sort of guy. But he said those people's lives had a pattern that they played in terms of meaning that they explored their interests, playing. So they were doing it because they wanted to. So it seemed like play. And over the course of time, that play developed into a specific passion about something that they loved from their experiences of exploration. And that passion developed into a purpose. And then they applied their skills and became innovators with that purpose and made real change and a real difference. So he talks about innovation as creative problem solving. And that's not where most people go when you say that word. And it's not exactly where I go, but it's certainly part of what I think is important. And he popularized, if you didn't come up with this concept of at the time 4 C's, that innovative learning, innovative contributions involve critical thinking, collaboration, communication, and creative problem solving skills. And then the obvious question is to come back and say, how well are we doing that for our children and our students in schools? And he thinks maybe not as well as we could. Traditional learning, the left-hand column, individual work and assessment, departmentalized learning, passive, sit and get, ranking, scoring, assessments happen once, you pass or you fail, and external motivation, recognition, and rewards. But Wagner and many others point out the future that we're looking at and the future of work and those who are going to be successful and contributing and making a difference. And I think AI is now adding an additional layer or additional impetus to that need. But the future is about collaborative work and integrated complex work, crossing disciplines, and about active engagement, individual initiative, creativity, about failing forward, design thinking, iterative kinds of processes that lead to learning from failure and learning forward as you go. And measurement in learning is not about if you can remember something for an exam, rather can you apply it and do something with it. And it's going to be more about intrinsic motivation rather than extrinsic. So he sees, and he's obviously not alone, a mismatch between the system that we currently use and the future that our children are headed for. So for this presentation, I'm going to frame it in terms of 3 or 4 perspectives and kind of ask questions. I know some of you probably know more about this than I do. Some of you are no doubt doing things in your schools that are innovative and transforming learning. But I think all of us can reflect on it and understand it better and move it forward. So perspective number 1, is it about technology or learning? Early on, I was in charge of a one-to-one laptop implementation at a big school in my career. And we went and visited a number of schools, and it was really interesting to see in several instances, we went in and they said, oh, yes, well, we're an innovative school. We have computers for every child. And you go into the classroom, what are you doing in the classroom with the child, with the technology? And it's nothing but a very expensive notebook or an expensive file cabinet. Nothing had changed in how the students learned or how the teachers taught, other than they had made it more efficient by using technology. Others saw it differently. And to me, this is probably the simplest and most straightforward way to think about it. And I'd like you to, as I talk about this, to consider your own schools and the question of what in different aspects of what you do in your schools, where are you in terms of SAMR? The S is the basic level at the beginning of use of technology, and it's primarily a matter of replacing a task with technology, as I just described. So now instead of using overhead transparencies, I use PowerPoint slides, but it's still the teacher standing at the front of the room lecturing, the students taking notes. Augmentation means that we are enhancing or adding to what we can do. So the technology adds new features that improve the task. So maybe there's some online searching or something else going on that couldn't be done without the technology. Third, the next level up, probably should have put these in the reverse order. Modification, the task it changes because technology allows us to do things differently and in a more interesting and a deeper way. And finally, the highest level is redefinition, where the technology allows us to do new things that are not just changed from how we used to do them, but we can now do new things we never did before and do them in ways we never did it before. So that SAMR is a nice, simple way for me to think about it. Here's a graphic presentation of it. And when we do a quick breakout, and my breakouts will be very short, so don't run away. But I'll put 2 handouts. I would have had it ready, but I got caught a little early here, so I'll get the handouts and put them into the chat. So you start out here with the, sorry, it moved on me. You start substitution, and then augmentation, and then modification, and then redefinition. And it really, in my own experience, we spend a lot of time on the first 2 levels, and occasionally to the third, and not near as often as we could do we get to the R. And so if you look at the far right of this graphic, substitution, a technology teacher directs students to use Google Earth Pro to Google Earth to locate a place instead of an atlas. So we're just doing the same thing, but now we do it digitally. To augment, the teacher instructs students to use Google Earth to measure the distance between 2 places on a map instead of calipers or estimating on a scale and so forth. So now we're doing things a little bit differently. We've added some depth or some broadened the what we're able to do in terms of basic tasks that we've always done. The moving across the middle line there, modification is when things start to get more interesting. The class could be used to use the Google Earth layers to research locations on a map. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with the layers, but it allows you to put on buildings or roads or businesses and other kinds of things and really look at what's going on in a place in a very convenient way. And of course, there's the street view, which allows you to actually see the buildings and do a 360 review. So using those features of technology, we can now modify things in significant ways where it's a much deeper experience for the students. And then redefinition, students use Google Earth to create a narrated guided tour of a location, which they can share online with other students. So I think I probably said enough here. I think this is probably not entirely new or at all to most of you, but again, it's a nice, simple framework to talk about that innovation in schools isn't about whether or not we have technology. Technology enables and increases innovation, but technology is about transformation of learning and the experiences that students have. So I would like to do a 3-minute breakout session. And Shannon, are you helping me with this part?
Excuse me, that will be Brandon.
Okay, Brandon, I'm sorry.
Brendan, sorry, it's Brendan that will be moving them into
All right.
groups.
Okay, and I've got to figure out how to get into the right window here. Well, maybe I can't.
And Dr. Cox, did you Could you tell me how many people about you would like to have in each?
About 3 in a group. And the question, very briefly, just a couple of sentences each, is what is the level SAMR for you at your school? Which what's most typical? All right, go ahead if you would, and I'll put these handouts in the chat here. So Brendan, do we have a few here in this room that didn't get placed? Is that what I'm guessing?
Yeah, I think these are folks who
Okay.
haven't
Probably
joined, can't join, whatever their situation.
All right, well, let's make this just one room then. So, I'm sorry, I'm about to get this into the chat. Would anyone be willing to share your response here? Is your school advanced in this? Are you above that middle line? Or is it something where you are still got a ways to go? And it's so easy to stay behind that pick. I'm wondering too, Brendan, if these might be people who had to step away for a minute or whatever as well. So.
Yeah, I think so.
All right. Well, I even got a shout out from Jenna Lynn. So, all right. Well, let's give it, why don't you give them a 30-second notice and bring everybody back now? That should have been enough time.
Yeah, I just moved a few people who are in rooms by themselves into some rooms
Okay.
with other people so they could chat for seconds.
Thank you. All right. They coming back?
It'll just give them about a minute to come back here. So.
Okay. All right. Can you give me a verbal note when we got everybody back?
Yeah. I think most people are rejoining now.
Okay. Are we ready to go on then?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm trusting most of you made it back. Appreciate it if you did. Would anybody be willing to share your response on whether you think your school has advanced in this process or not? I'd like to at least have somebody speak to that if you're willing. Just jump in.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I would say realistically, we're a K-8 school, and I would say most of what we do with tech is probably in the substitution and augmentation category. You know, I'm not aware of everything that happens at every grade level on any given day, but the things I have seen, I think most of them fit into that category. Maybe a little modification once in a while, but I think you know, we do tend to not want tech to be a huge focus of what our kids spend their day doing, but they do all have access to devices. But I think about my middle school students. They do a lot of writing on their Chromebooks, sharing of documents, commenting on each other's documents, and that sort of thing. You know, I'm thinking of an English class, but nothing super fancy, I would say.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate you sharing that. And I think you make a good point, and I appreciate you making it, that it isn't about fancy. It's about how students learn and the depth and the quality of the experiences they're having, and whether they're using the skills that they're going to need. And if we make it about technology, then we go awry. Thank you. Perspective 2. And by the way, I put into the chat this SAMR document, and also this another document we'll be referring to in a minute. This goes back to the original 2 pictures, the cornfield and the garden. Not news to you that our model of education has historically been industrial. And we have the opportunity, partly by the enablement of technology, to do things differently. So that could easily be my own grade school classroom there on the left. And now we can structure things and manage them differently. Again, I was looking through that picture just to see if I happened to be in it on the left. But in the right, the kids are sitting in different configurations. They're interacting. The adults are in a supportive role. I believe that's Sal Khan from the Khan Academy. And Wagner identified 4 C's that he talked about. And Fullen and others have come along and added 2 more, citizenship and character, which I think is valuable, but I think they play a different role than the first 4. They're different parts of the learning experience. So I'm going to be primarily talking about the top 4 here: creativity, critical thinking, collaboration, communication. And I think in talking to a staff of teachers about this, it would be a mistake to come at it except from this perspective of, are there things we can do to bring these experiences, or to enhance what we do with our students, to add experiences in those key C's, especially the top 4: critical thinking, collaboration. And it's a lot easier to sell to parents, especially if they're focused on basic education priorities and so forth. Critical thinking is hard to argue against. If you say innovative, creative, or whatever, maybe some people react differently to that. If you want to pursue this idea further, you might want to look into the term deep learning. Michael Fullen's written about that, and a lot of other work's gone on about that. Fullen and Quinn came to Provo 3-4 years ago and did a training. I think Nebo co-sponsored it with BYU, and they were here in this area working on these things, and say, how do you deeply embed this kind of learning in your curriculum? So it's not just learn something, pass the test, and then move on. So this is the handout I gave you, because that's a lot of text for a slide. But there they are, and I don't have time for us to do a whole lot of deep dive into what they mean, but I think that we understand what we're talking about here. These are the learning and working skills that our students need to have. They were not the things that were, and yet I would say these are not necessarily the things that we focus on and measure. So I'm not going to put you into the breakout groups on this, but ask you, what is to consider this, and then maybe 1 or 2 of you will respond. What is your school's strongest C, and what is your weakest C? Anybody willing to take the plunge with that? What's your strongest of the C's, and what's one you would want to work on? And by the way, Jenna Lynn, thank you for the shout out in the chat. We share the same parking lot. Anybody willing? If not, you have to keep listening to me. All right.
I
Go
I
ahead.
would say we do a really good job at our school with the collaboration piece and the creative problem solving. I think our teachers really push their kids to think in innovative ways and working together to solve problems across the grades. I think the ongoing challenge for our school, and I would say this is a larger cultural challenge, and that is communication across difference, across boundaries of difference, learning how to teach our kids to understand and be empathetic and then use language that reflects a certain kind of cultural awareness and cultural empathy for what's happening around them. I think that's the big challenge that we face.
Steve, thanks for sharing again. Can I ask what school you're at? You're at?
It's the Weileman School. We're up in Summit County, just outside of Park City.
Oh, all right, great. Well, good. We've had a few students in our program from up in that part of the world, and we run a hybrid program, so it's easier for students who are further away to participate.
Okay.
So put that 6 C's in the box, deep learning. So we're talking about the transformation of learning and how we use technology to support learning, talking about deepening learning in these areas of the C's. And ultimately the question you have to ask is, can we do better? And so I'd like to point you at some resources again. These are things that we look at in our program and then ask the question, okay, every school works with significant constraints, whether it be in terms of a public school district that wants standardization across schools, whether it be a charter school or any school where resources are harder to come by or not, or where you have community expectations that you're dealing with or not. And it's easy, and I've often seen in my own experience of where people kind of dismiss this sort of thinking or this sort of opportunity, saying it won't work in where I am. And my own response to that is, we can't do everything, but I'll bet we could do something deeper, something better. And Ted Dintersmith, who works with Wagner at Harvard, wrote this book, What School Could Be. He spent a full year, he went to all 50 states and looked at innovative practices. So this is a quick clip. I will let you hear it from his mouth.
Can you hear it? So I'm Ted Dintersmith. I produced a film called Most Likely to Succeed several years ago. It's the first contribution I made to this important topic of how we prepare kids for a future that will be quite different. The film was great. I didn't direct it. Greg Whiteley did, and he did a remarkable job. But I did travel a lot with the film, and I went to place after place, community after community. The film now has done 7,000 school screenings around the world. I've probably done 250. People ask me a very fair question. You know, this was about a school in San Diego called High Tech High that started in 2002 from scratch.
Sorry about that. Well, let's quit playing.
Around the world, I've probably done, you know, there are, most of our kids are in existing schools. And so as I traveled.
Well, sorry.
Which actually is a very hard and important problem. I think it's harder to change an existing school than to create a new school. So 3 years ago, I took an unusual trip. So I left in September. I traveled for every school day for an entire school year, went to all 50 states, visited a couple hundred schools, met governors, commissioners of education, state legislators, PTAs, you know, business people, but lots and lots and lots of parents and students and teachers. And I have to say, I was just blown away. When I set out on that trip, I had no idea that I would write a book. but I just saw so many remarkable things and was so moved, particularly by the dedication and the passion of our teachers. And so I got home in June and I said, I really need to write about this. So I sat down, tried to think through what I had seen, tried to think through how I could organize it in a book. And what I ended up doing is writing about pretty much one really incredible thing I saw in each state, intentionally to make the point that there is great innovation going on all across the country, but to pick these examples in some sort of a coherent sequence so that I could tell a story about K through 12, tell a story about higher education, about social equity, about human potential, about what communities can do when they come together, about policies that don't work, and a whole different perspective on policies that can work. And so the book came out in April. Believe it or not, it's 3.5 months into the process, and we're now going into our 4th printing. So I'm gratified. I think people find it something that's interesting to read. And I really go after some of the important issues about how kids learn, how we can prepare kids in ways that just don't look like normal school, and how we can start to create the conditions that trust teachers to create really distinctive and great learning experiences where what's happening here might look very different from what's happening here, but in their own ways, each of those learning settings is helping kids find distinctive strengths, connect their learning to the real world, develop, mature, blossom, and develop that conviction that with their talents, with their determination, with resources around them that will step up and help them, they can find ways to make their world better, carry those initiatives through to completion, and have that immense satisfaction of knowing they matter.
So Wagner and Dintersmith, previous to the video you saw, they wrote this book and prepared the movie. You may have seen it's a full-length movie, well, about an hour, I guess, a little over an hour, Most Likely to Succeed, and they do an in-depth look. So we look at this pretty hard in our program as one dimension of, school leaders are the key. Change, innovation, creativity in teaching doesn't happen. Well, it happens in very small pockets or just in very limited classrooms unless the school leader makes it safe, supports it, and understands it. And that's why I'm excited to have the opportunity to talk with you, because you're school leaders who have stepped up and said, I'm willing to move into this role and make a difference and do it in so many different ways. One of the questions I've had, and I wish we were face to face, I'd love to have this conversation with you in greater depth, is in the charter school setting, do you have, and I've had my students who are from charter schools, I've talked to them about this, do you have the freedom to look at this differently and to transform things more independently of a public system? No, you are public, I'm sorry, but of a district system where uniformity across schools and so forth is a bigger challenge or a bigger requirement and priority. Because in my mind, some of the charter schools that I visited and the students I've worked with, that is exactly what's happening in your schools, is you are identifying places to make a difference and to do things differently and to address kids and learning differently. So the movie, this is the whole thing about it, and I've showed it to my parent groups in schools in the past, and I show it to my students. And we'll get a little bit of a taste of this. We won't watch a lot. This isn't the whole movie, by the way. But this is a taste of what they talk about. And they focus on High Tech High in San Diego, which is a public charter school that takes state exams and successfully they don't blow them away, but they don't care. That's not why they're there. So we'll give you a little look at this real quick.
The last significant change in the way we educated our kids occurred around 124 years ago. It was the dawn of the Industrial Revolution. Most kids were raised on farms and jobs were plentiful and predictable. Then in 1843, an educator from Massachusetts decides to visit Prussia on his honeymoon, where he witnesses a brand new type of education. Up until that time, education primarily consisted of smart people sitting around talking to other smart people. But after the Prussians were embarrassed in the Napoleonic Wars in the 1800s, this Prussian decides to institute a new type of education for every German boy from 7 to 14 years old. which results in a more fit, more organized, more obedient army. Among his many reforms was this idea: to divide up instruction according to age, ability, and subject matter. Strange as it seems today, this had never been done before. This idea of teaching math in one room, science in another room, language skills in yet another was totally new. Horace Mann witnesses this new educational model and he's stunned. Inspired by what he sees, he brings these educational ideas back to the US, where it captures the attention of these men. Just like the Prussians, who were anxious to develop more obedient troops, these fathers of the Industrial Revolution were desperate to transform our nation of disorganized farm laborers into trained, efficient workers for their factory and assembly line jobs.
We divide the day up in high schools into bits of time, to 40 or 50-minute blocks typically, and then we ring bells and people start to shuffle around the building and do something else. That's an organizational device. It's not an educational principle. And it is, in broad sweeps, a system that resembles a factory culture.
If you built a factory in upstate New York and another along the Ohio River, you desperately needed these workers to behave similarly, to know the same kinds of things. If high school graduates in Ohio could quote Shakespeare, but students in New York couldn't even write their own name, it was difficult to build a standard set of factories which utilized both sets of workers. That's when it was decided to form a committee called the Committee of 10. The committee was tasked with coming up with a standard set of subjects every kid should know.
10 university heads in 1890 said, in 11th grade, everyone should learn chemistry. In senior year, everyone should learn physics, and that it should be earth science. They came up with this whole trajectory calculus, and a lot of these subjects are great, but these priorities were dictated 120 years ago, 124 years ago.
Back in 1892, the Committee of 10 designed our nation's curriculum, and for the most part, it has not changed.
The current systems of education fails to recognize that all students are people, that they have feelings, they have motivations, they have aspirations, they have lives and biographies and circumstances. And as soon as you miss that point, as soon as you start talking about students as data points, you're in big trouble. And the trouble's evident. We've got hundreds of thousands of people going to college every year. And when they leave, they are not in anything like the situation that college graduates used to be in. It used to be the case when I was at college that if you had a college degree, it was pretty much a guarantee of a job. Pretty much. It's not now.
As we go from an industrial economy to an information economy, our most valuable part of capital in the economy is no longer going to be industrial capital, it's going to be human capital. That's going to define which nations succeed. That's going to define which nations have a broad and rich middle class. That's going to define which nations are innovating, which nations are strong militarily. It's all going to be based on how innovative and creative and entrepreneurial its people are, how much ownership they have, how much curiosity they've been able to retain through their life.
So I really think we need to put in place educational environments that help the kids understand that the world is an interesting place and their job is to go understand it, probe it, change it, and poke at it. Those are still skills I haven't seen computers display.
Right now, we are attempting to educate a generation of kids who will work in jobs that have not been invented yet. They will be called on to solve problems in a world so complex we can't even imagine it. How do you design a school system that prepares kids for that? Over 100 years ago,
Again, those aren't new concepts, but I don't think the fact that we've heard it before makes it any less significant. And I think as time progresses, we see layer after layer of that coming to pass in different ways. In terms of now with AI, I was in a workshop the other day, a training we did with our faculty, and they said AI won't take jobs, but people who know how to use it will in the future. And the comments the one gentleman made about the world is something to be probed, to be understood, to be wondered about, and so forth. That spirit, I think we could do better in getting that, helping our students understand learning in that way. So then the question that again, we won't be able to discuss really in this setting, but I would love to have this conversation with some of you. What can a charter school do in transforming learning? What is the opportunity? I mean, you have charter schools by definition, the way they're formed and where they come from in most instances, it's really about, we want to do something different. We want to meet a different need. We have a different priority or different look at things. And if this is a part of what you do, and I know it is in many cases done very well, that's, I think, a powerful opportunity. And to put it in another perspective or context, this will be my last one, though there's still a little bit of time left here, so don't get too excited. Clayton Christensen, who's a BYU grad, Rhodes Scholar from BYU, and was a very, very influential thinker at Harvard, did a lot of work, as I'm imagining you're familiar, in the area of disruption in economies. And he wrote a number of books on disruption in various different parts of the economy. He started with steel, healthcare, and he wrote this book, Disrupting Class, and how disruption is occurring and going to accelerate in the educational sphere. And his theory of disruption is that change tends to develop outside the dominant systems in the economic field, or in this case, education. And the example he uses is steel, rebar. And that steel companies, the big steel makers, rebar was a low return item. There wasn't much profit in it, and so they didn't bother. But the Koreans and others got really good at it, innovated on the practices in this low profit part of things, and eventually developed it to where it overwhelmed the big players in the field. The easiest one to example is probably computers. IBM, Texas Instruments, so the big dogs in the computer industry in the 70s and 80s had no interest in personal computers. There was no money there, and their clients didn't want them and didn't need them. So the first personal computers, legendary story, the Apple is made in a garage. And it's these people who are innovating in the fringes, in the low profit fringes, in the case of the economic thing, gradually perfect their craft. They get better at it, they do it cheaper, they do it more efficiently until they overwhelm the mainstream. So in the case of education, where is the disruptive innovation occurring? And it's occurring in charter schools and in homeschooling and in online schools, and people and institutions and companies and individual schools that are innovating and getting better and better at it, and finding better ways to deliver, better ways to engage students, more flexible ways to manage it. Of course, COVID had a big impact on how fast all of this developed. And that innovation is eventually going to transform the core brick and mortar school systems and districts that traditionally have been the only source worthy for learning. And the Khan Academy is a good example. I imagine you know the story. Khan was speaking there. I had a chance to spend a day there and to see their Khan Lab School. And for being as famous as they are, they're basically in a little building like an old apartment complex, 2-story. You drive into the parking lot and there's no signage that you're there. Their playground for the lab school is the parking lot and the little bit of grass around the school. But you go in, the kids were excited. It's an experimental school, and they have no grades. Kids work through their progressions. They plan their own learning schedules and work with their teachers and work with older students and younger students and so forth. And they're trying to remove some of those industrial style barriers. That's a pretty expensive way to do things. It's not going to become the mainstream, but it's certainly going to become an option that's available. But upstairs in that building, they have all the computers where they're doing all of the Khan Academy online resources for free, using donations to fund it. And it's become a very influential, and it was an accidental thing. Sal Khan was helping his niece, and all of this grew out of it. So that innovation is happening and technology empowers it. And it's my feeling that charter schools have the opportunity to do that more than maybe a traditional public school in a district system. Traditional education was built for standardization, but disruptive education is going to be focused on personalization, customization, and it's going to be focused on the skills of the C's that we were talking about. So I would like to ask maybe one or two of you, probably Steve, if you're still to answer, if anybody else is. How do you, am I seeing this with any correctness in terms of charter schools being a place where these things could be done more quickly and effectively and have an influence on the whole system? Is that, am I misunderstanding that?
Dr. Cox, my name is Tess Minor-Fair with the Winter Sports School up here in Park City, Utah. And I'd say one of the things that I say to the families who come to visit our school all the time is that we can be more agile. And I think that gives us an advantage as charter schools on the whole to be able to implement innovation, to try out things that we just, our system can move faster, right? So I think you're absolutely correct.
That's encouraging to hear. In my courses, we go to the state charter school website and look at all the schools. I have my students read through the entire list of charter schools in Utah and watch each one is focused on. And they kind of say to us, oh, had no idea that was going on. And yet I think that's where we're headed. Anyone else willing to respond to that? I haven't been paying attention to the, okay, sorry, just checking the chat. I know when I left Mesa, I was in Mesa Public Schools in Arizona for 25 years and as a teacher and then an administrator for many years. And then I left that to go run a private international school in Beijing, China. And I remember just sitting in my chair and saying, wow, I don't have to go and get 12 other schools to agree to make this change. And we, like you say, more agile. And we could respond to and respond to good ideas and respond to needs and things much more effectively. That's what I hope. If there's any contribution I may or may be making here today, is that I see what you're doing in the charter schools as being a real potent and potentially powerful influence on where we're going to go, and to get us to a different, a more effective, more innovative, transformed, personalized, pick your word, type of education for our students. Then, and I think the imperative to do that is increasing. Well, the end of the show here was going to be to take a minute to talk about what's one thing I want to do in my school to change. And I haven't tracked time real closely since we started early. I'm pretty sure I'm not going over the could I ask for any general comments? What are the opportunities you're seeing, or are there barriers you're encountering in your resources are always a barrier no matter where you are, but any comments on any of this? I'd like to wind up with a couple of comments if possible. And with a computer, you can't make eye contact and put pressure on somebody like you can in a classroom. So Justin, I'm looking at you in case you were wondering. Since you were brave enough to turn your camera on, I appreciate it.
Yeah, I've had a similar experience to you, Dr. Cox, and being in public traditional education for 27 years, and then recently moving to Utah and entering into this great opportunity with charter schools. The flexibility that we just heard about, the agility. I've heard, I used to belong to a blog called the Committed Sardines, and he would talk about being at the Monterey Aquarium, and how in education we're more like oil tankers. You got to plan to turn, whereas when you watch sardines, they just the whole school just shifts. And I like to think of this group of people as committed sardines, that we can, not only can we shift, but I think the power of this group is how when an innovation does work, is how we can use a platform like this to share that innovation with one another in order to serve kids better. I don't have to put things up the flagpole or call my director or assistant superintendent to ask permission. I get a group of people in the room and we make that decision, and then we can implement next Monday if we want to. I think what I'm thinking about from this presentation is, how to leverage that agility or the opportunity to be that agile, and how to leverage that more in the future moving forward here at Vista.
Thank you. I appreciate those insights. I was thinking what kind of a logo for the sardines, the committed sardines, what that might look like. There's a wonderful book called The Smart Swarm. I don't know if you've run into that, but they talk about swarm behavior and talk about how those swarms move because of instant communication, and then they talk about applications of that to human organizations. So for an interesting discussion. Well, let me conclude with this. Again, when I came to UVU, my brief was connect to the schools in a way that's meaningful and supports practical on-the-ground education. And that's the way we build our courses. If there is, we would be open to supporting what you were just talking about, Justin. If there's a symposium or some way that, the UVU could be involved in supporting charter schools more directly. Like I say, we have a number of students from charter schools. Of course, we share the parking lot with UCAS, and I've worked with those folks, and they're doing wonderful work there in their model. But if you see a role where we can contribute to that, we would love to be a part of that and to empower what you're doing. If there's something we can do, and I'm not sure what it would be, that would probably have to come from you, but we're certainly open to that. Marie and I sit in many meetings together, and Shannon, and we'll, if there's that would be exciting. Right now, we're doing a statewide study of principal burnout. I hope some of you saw it. We have 184 principals who have responded, and we're working through the data now to look at how do we support school leaders in the high stress environment that we're in. So that's the focus we've got, and let me know if I can be involved. It's a privilege to be with you here today. I honor your work and hope I get to see you face to face at some point.
Thank you, Dr. Cox. That was wonderful. And we would love to work with you in some collaboration. And I'm sure that Marie will be in touch, but we'll keep that in mind as well. Thank you for the timely discussion and for the conversation that each of you shared. As with all of our other trainings, if you will just take a moment to click on this code and leave some feedback for us, that would be helpful as we gear future trainings and as we prepare things for our charter school directors. Our next charter school training that UAPCS will be providing will be with Dr. Doug Stump on April 8th. So looking forward to that. Dr. Cox, thank you again, particularly for being flexible and joining us earlier than scheduled.
My pleasure. Thank you very much. Take care.
All right. Well, then that concludes our meeting. And as we've been running ahead of schedule, that also means we will end ahead of schedule. So hopefully everyone had a great directors meeting, and we hope you have a great rest of your week. Happy Valentine's Day if you celebrate, and have a good rest of the month of February. We will see you later.